if all of a sudden you were facing a true crap, now what moment? Welcome to the latest episode of Crap, Now What, where the purpose of this podcast is to share different slices of life that do tend to have that crap, now what feeling to them, that moment where a person is stopped dead in their tracks and has to think or react or move forward. Now, the spirit, too, of this podcast is to also share things that are on different spectrums from different viewpoints. They're not necessarily always life-changing, crap, now what, but they're life-changing maybe in a smaller way. Today, I would be absolutely wrong if I did not take the topic of crap, now what, and talk about what's going on in LA. It's relevant. It can't be ignored. It would almost seem inappropriate to put focus in a different place. And so we're going to do that today. And I do understand that I've never done this before. And this does not mean that this disaster in California is by far any larger than any other hurricane, any other tornado, any of the other things that have happened around the world, in our country, etc., that I'm singling this one out. I am not. But I also am telling you that as host of Crap, Now What, that this is a true situation that we can all learn from. And the spirit of this podcast is also to talk about being informed versus uninformed. And that the spirit that I come from is a passion to share with you any kind of knowledge, experience, things that I have ran into, so that you have the idea of what it would be like if you ever were to have a conversation with me one-on-one, what type of person would be in the room with you, and what it would be like to work with my team. So we're not always financially focused directly towards retirement and things along those lines. However, a moment like this, where a person's life is changed so dramatically, whatever type of disaster that they're in. And I am really having a very hard time when it comes to thinking and talking about what's going on in Los Angeles area with those fires as a natural disaster. Yes, technically speaking, it has the natural disaster elements to it, but there are a lot of human elements to it as well. These topics are my opinion only. I will weave in the thought of things with finances and experience, etc., and recommendations as well. However, at any one time, your situation is individual. It is relevant to you. It is something that I can't necessarily speak to unless we have a one-on-one conversation. If you were to seek out any other type of direction, you should do that independently with a type of financial advisor, accountant, etc. So let's get past this without all the things that I have done to say that this is my opinion. And today I am going to hop on a soapbox for a little bit because I guess I've got the microphone and this is a crap now what moment. The fact that so many things have happened in LA in the last few days, there's a lot of things that are very alarming. And I would have to believe, as preparation for this particular episode, I looked back at different times in history and different disasters to see what some of those other things that there were that led up to it. I'm not 100% sure that I understand completely why there's such a big highlighter on what's going wrong and how this got out of hand so bad, I think that's happened before. And I think it's pretty natural that these disasters that come, there's variables that people don't anticipate no matter how much preparedness that there is. I think that there are some things that have been pointed and fingers that are being pointed. And I don't believe, I like to think that it's not just because of celebrities, because if you've watched any of the coverage, we're seeing schools, churches, mom and pop businesses, everyday activities that people do being destroyed, whole neighborhoods, whole lifestyles have been destroyed. So let's talk about this. Here are the things that are concerning. This is the set that is current to the LA situation, and this is the set from what I know. I'm not on the ground, I'm not in this, but from what I'm getting from the news and some independent research, these are the things that are concerning and probably are things that have happened similar in other disasters. And I'm saying this because it's almost impossible to have your eye on all the balls. You can't necessarily know everything. Now, I kind of hope that some people say yes, but they knew this and this and this. You know, just like we know a hurricane is about to come, but we can't always know everything. But let's talk about this a little bit. The lack of water. The lack of water in the fire hydrants. I really got confused on this one, to be honest with you. I didn't understand how fire hydrants work when people said that there wasn't any water. I don't know what the water source is exactly. Did a little bit of independent research. There are times when this is being reported on, it almost makes it sound like there's just like an independent bin and they have to be filled. I always thought that they were connected to something else, so that there would be an endless stream of water. I think that's more like what it's supposed to be, but I'm not an engineer. But what I did find out is that the typical output of a fire hydrant is supposed to be 1,500 gallons a minute. That a typical swimming pool can be filled in 10 minutes. The amount of water that was unavailable is unbelievable. I know that there are thousands of people today that are sitting here still, and I know that the governor got cornered by people who are angry, who said, why is there no water? I'm not the answer to that, but that's very concerning, and my guess is that this kind of thing probably happens in other places. The fact that the state of California has also let some dams go in recent time. So there's lack of reservoirs. Apparently there's lack of reservoirs so that we're not necessarily going out to the ocean and getting salty water and pouring that on fires. In this case, I think people would have taken salty water. Vegetation could be replaced. I don't know what else it would have hurt, but that might not have been bad. I'm not an environmental person. I know where my purview is at. I know where my skills are at. But this is very concerning when there's lack of water. There's been changes for dams. There's been changes for the way the water is moving through the state. California is a very long, narrow state. It starts way, 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 way up in the northern part of our country, up towards Oregon. And there's a big difference between that and the way San Diego is, being right there on the border with Mexico. My understanding in this is that water's been redirected over a small fish. Now, again, I understand and I appreciate that there are a lot of reasons why endangered species are protected. I'm not suggesting that something that's endangered should be just let go. However, when I did some independent research in this particular example, if I went to Sea Grant, California, CSEA, Grant, California, they were talking about this little fish being domesticated to a certain degree and being raised in buildings. in order to keep the species going. So if I'm piecing this together, we've got the website saying we've had to go to raising and growing this population. I've seen this with salmon before on documentaries in previous years. If that's the case, and these little fish are being grown in buildings, but yet the state diverted water into the ocean in order to protect this fish, something doesn't make sense. Something doesn't make sense. The other thing that doesn't make sense necessarily about this fish, but it's also something I haven't seen in the reports, but if you do your independent research, this particular fish doesn't get eaten, of course, but it does serve a purpose on measuring the quality of water, different things about, it's got some indicators as to what's going on in our environment. And that's very important too. And this goes back all the way to the days when Charles Darwin went to the Galapagos Islands and got to see a very good microcosm of vegetation and animals and different things along those lines, that a lot of our, of course, there were some theories of evolution, etc., that were supported by that trip, but also a lot of learning. I believe that that's a lot of the roots of understanding how ecologically and life for us as a species, how they blend together, how we're taking care of our country and our environment, etc. So I respect these things. Here's why I think it's very important and why it's a big deal for Crap Now What, and why I'm bringing it up on this episode. All of these things together have caused a huge crap now what moment for thousands and thousands and thousands of people who have nothing. And they didn't have to pay that price. Yes, each year, like they talk about Miley Cyrus. Miley Cyrus has lost 2 houses now. She lost one several years ago, and now this one, which is unbelievable that she's starting over again. I can't even imagine. I can't even imagine anybody losing a house that quickly. And again, the California fires, each year, a few houses go. I'm sure there's probably more than a few. I know we see it. We see it here in the Midwest, even on the news. But to this extreme. And yes, not that long ago, we had this issue in Hawaii. I know there was reporting on that. I'm not 100% sure, though, that I saw as much reporting as there is on LA. And maybe we're learning. Here's the main thing that I want you to do. And I think this is what's going to be very defining for this moment, is that as you look at this, as people start to call out the leadership from the governor who made some of these decisions, maybe not to have some of the preparedness done for his state, such as controlled burns, etc. We're familiar with those here in the Midwest. We see some of that going on when it comes to brush on our farmland, etc. To the city itself, that appears to have had some issues being prepared as well. That this is not the only city in our vast country. It's not the only state. There's 50 of them. So governor to governor, there's 50 of them. There are also countless cities where we have mayors. Not every city is like Los Angeles. Los Angeles is huge. We have mayors of small towns. We have mayors of small towns in our country that barely make anything. And they're running those small towns. It's not about the money. What I'm saying is that, which by the way is really kind of unfair for somebody to be practically a volunteer mayor. What I'm saying is that there's a big difference, and this is one of the things that I've been hearing, and I think that this is a very big point. There's a difference between learning how to run an election and become the winner, so to speak. In some cases, people run semi-unopposed. And there's a difference between that and running a city. Very big difference. And why is that important in this podcast with Crap Now What? Because this, on some level, could happen to anybody. I just relocated. I spend most of my time in Wichita. I am still pretty new to the area. I don't know a whole heck of a lot what the current plans are, what they would be. I'm not even sure if I could tell you who the mayor is and put them in a lineup. That's wrong of me. That's what I'm saying is that our elected officials at some of these levels get elected and then maybe are underqualified to be able to run the place that they are in charge of. And that seems reasonable. It's very logical if you really think about it. And if you think about it, if anybody's coming from a small town and you've got a mayor of a town of 5,000, for example, and this person isn't even making a large enough salary in order to make it their main job, then you've also got someone who's got more than one job who isn't able to do all their focus in one area. And it's not all about being a budget focused person. That's one of the main jobs, run the budget, make sure that works. Perhaps know how to call in a disaster, get some relief, etc. And not to jump over too quickly, but if you haven't seen this, there is a whole Lockerbie feature. I believe that's on Max. I would have to actually do the research. I didn't plan on bringing it up. But when the situation happened, when the plane blew up over Lockerbie, Scotland, that was over a small town. It destroyed part of the small town. People were falling from the sky. The plane was falling from the sky. The plane was falling from the sky, burning. So you had burning debris that landed on parts of this small town. Just like I said, it could happen to anyone. A disaster can happen to anyone. You can't foresee all of those. I get it. As a mayor, as someone in the city council, etc. But there is still some point in there where there is a connection between the quality of people that we put into these positions and the readiness, because we pay our taxes and we expect to be taken care of to a certain degree, or at least maybe taken care of as to here's the evacuation plan, here's the note that needs to go out on your phone as an emergency, which by the way, California is having a problem with right now. Interestingly enough, we just had a blizzard the other day, and not long after I recorded last week's episode, which I recorded during the blizzard, there was a note that came out. It blew up my phone just like it would have, like an Amber Alert that said, roads are too dangerous, do not go out. Do not, there's too much ice, too much snow, don't go out. Those are the types of things that are happening in California, except now we're finding out that some of them have been inaccurate. I can't even unpack that one. So there's a point in there where we have to rely on ourselves. There's a point in there where we have to take more notice of who we have as elected officials. I know I plan on that. I know I plan on learning more about who and where people are coming from if they're going to be my elected official. What are they going to have as their skill set to be able to handle the job? Because it is at some level a business. Most definitely. And I'm not saying only a business person can do it. No. But what I'm saying is that it has to be somebody who can manage a lot of areas and be intuitive. And my word for the year 2025 is curious with the what ifs. Now, some people do want to, in this particular situation, want to blame the fire department. Now, the fire department does actually have different divisions, etc., within the area. And actually, interestingly enough, the mayor that we're seeing the most of is not the mayor of all the areas where all the fires are at. There are some areas where the fires are at that have mayors that are on top of it a little bit differently. So there's that too. If you're in one small town and it causes a problem with the one next door, many of us who live in larger cities, I have Wichita here, then Goddard here, Mays here, Bel Air there, this and that. That's the same way that you get in other cities. Kansas City is not just Kansas City. Omaha is not just Omaha. We know that this is the way it is everywhere. Dallas, everywhere. So there's that too. But as a citizen, we can't necessarily go down that rabbit hole completely. But what we do need to do, if there's anything to learn for you to help mitigate your own potential crap now what moment when it comes to a natural disaster, it starts with be more knowledgeable, be curious. If you're not knowledgeable, definitely get more knowledgeable. If you're already somewhat knowledgeable, even become more knowledgeable and know who's being elected and what the expectations are. Be curious. I think things are very different now because of social media, and I recently had somebody ask me to do a survey with, how often do you read the newspaper? How often do you read all the sections? Heck, I don't do that. Most people don't read a full newspaper anymore. Most people don't read a full section of a newspaper anymore. They read different portions online and from a variety of different online resources. And that's probably part of the reason why it's going to take more of an effort to understand that, okay, well, my state is about to close XYZ dam and it's going to have this impact. Or my state is going to divert this and this, which actually could put this in danger for this reason. And I should be knowledgeable about this because I'm going to get a chance to vote on it or whatever the process is. And I think that this is part of the fragmentation of social media. We don't necessarily know about what's going on around us, maybe as thoroughly or globally as maybe we used to. I don't know that for sure. I'm throwing that out there. But that means then that it's going to take us a little more effort to pay attention to the things and our surroundings around us and what that impact is. That's one thing. Now, one thing that I do want to make sure, I am not being critical of the fire departments in this situation. I know that some news sources have, and maybe they have different information than I do. But what I am familiar with, and it is a little bit more like how a business is run, that the way somebody moves up to be a fire chief, it's not like you apply from outside and you get named fire chief. Some places and some people are talking about this just as they did when Trump had the assassination attempt, that there was some discussion about the people that were in the Secret Service. Some of the questions about the quality, the diversity that gets thrown out there. That's where some of the talk is at as far as the fire chief goes. But my understanding in talking to and having friends that are in that pipeline, There are examinations. So there's years and years and years and years, traditionally years and years and years of experience on the ground, being a firefighter and in different roles. Examinations and interviews. So it's not just something that somebody gets tapped in and put in. I believe you have to really earn those stripes, so to speak. So questioning the fire departments on this, I think, would be a little bit unusual and maybe unnecessary in that direction. But we should always be aware of if there's some significant changes to anything along those lines with the system like that. Okay, so here I am as usual talking with my hands. Let's talk about this a little bit and what I want you to do, other than the fact that I've already peppered this conversation very much. Be prepared for natural disaster. And it starts with things that are not as tangible. It starts with the fact that we should be more curious, be curious about who your elected officials are, some of the things that are going on in the area, maybe some things environmentally that might make a difference. That could be the case in any of these hurricanes, decisions that were made for one reason or another that maybe resources weren't available. I would have to do independent research, and probably now that I've gotten so curious about this situation, to be able to take to this platform to share with you why those are important. I wouldn't be surprised if in at least one city in our country that at least one celebrity or somebody of from a different angle comes in to take over as some of these mayors, runs for mayors and governors, etc. I think that there's going to be some people that have been outspoken on camera about where's this, because even their expectations were that these things would be there, that we would never get to a situation like this, that the gross oversights were unbelievable. I think some people will put their money where their mouth is when it comes to that, and be willing to be more involved. I think that everybody should take a portion of that idea and apply it within their own community. So know your representatives. This is what I want you to do. Know your representatives. What decisions are they making? What are some things that have maybe been tabled that might come back? Then let's get more towards things that are very important when it comes to your money, because this is definitely a financial impact. Any of these disasters are when a person's lost their home, when a person has to flee very quickly. There are a lot of things that it impacts in your financial set. So what can we do to at least be neutralizing that as much as possible? I found this actually on the Sheriff Association's website for Oregon as I was doing my research. And this is a 72-hour plan. Everybody should be ready. Midwest, tornadoes, it doesn't matter where you are. Everybody should be ready for a disaster. Frankly, if you're traveling, you should also have some subset of this available should there be something that happens while you're traveling, whether it's at home or wherever you go. That said, things that you should have ready. I suggest at least one of those handheld fireproof boxes that can be grabbed. It's like a small suitcase that can be grabbed. If you miss it, at least maybe it's still really fireproof for real. But it has birth certificates in it, passports, Social Security cards, as much insurance policy information that you possibly have. I am not talking just about life insurance in this case. We don't want to think the worst about it with the life insurance. We're talking about our car insurance, homeowners insurance if you have it. Some people don't have it in certain areas of the country because of the risks that they weren't offered that opportunity. Personal Policies such as health care policies. Anything along those lines, having that information available is very important. They say immunization records, any more of those tend to be online, but if you have any of that information, definitely have that also in that grab and go if you can. Tax statements would be a lot easier, especially if you prepare your own taxes. If you can at all, grab your laptop. If you can have a backup set of bank account information and passwords, do that as well. Medications, have your medications handy. That is the bare minimum. People also try to grab photos and a few other special things. Make sure to do the core first. It's kind of like put your mask on yourself first before you put it on the kid. Just the visual there. Part of this 72 hours that is important would be a secondary kit. If you live in an area where you do know you really should be prepared for a quick exit, definitely have that first part. But also, if at all possible, have things that are like generators. There's a lot of people I know that have purchased generators because of potential and expected power outages. Water, a certain amount of food that's available, a first aid kit, spare clothing and blankets, tools that might be needed, and some of the other unique and special items that make sense. There's things like flashlights. Yes, you could go overboard, but really a person should have some of these things in a position to be able to take care of themselves for the first 72 hours. You can see this now if you're really watching any of this. Some of the people had to start evacuating on Tuesday. You know, there's places like hotels and Airbnbs and things that are stepping up to help because so many people were unhoused so quickly. But to be able to be self-sustaining for 72 hours is really a very, very good idea. Let's look at this a little bit, and I'm going to dip my toe in this as well. The future for people when they go through a disaster. And I gave you the what you should do to help mitigate your crap now what moment as much as possible because of the adrenaline and the fear and the anxiety that goes along with it. What else I want you to consider. People who've lost their houses that do not have insurance. It's bad enough if you have insurance. The amount of paperwork, the time, they talk about the permits, etc. They talk about the disaster. It has to be cleared out first, let alone maybe be allowed to rebuild in this situation. The same thing happens in areas where there's tornadoes and hurricanes, etc. And earthquakes. We haven't even really mentioned that one. Financially, though, it's an impact no matter how much income a person makes, and it's an impact on how much a person has in savings. Think about it. If your business suddenly closed down, whether you're the owner or not, your job could be impacted. Your source of income could suddenly be cut off. So the potential for having a loss and then not having the income to balance the loss is pretty great, very high. And there are ways that you could insulate yourself from that, but that's not the topic for today. What happens though, and this goes back to previous topics that I've talked about, oftentimes people will start to and need to get into their 401ks and IRAs and accounts that have been set aside for their retirement. That is a topic that's very real. That bucket of money could suddenly go, and that means then not only is there the devastation of the immediate loss, the mourning of the idea that you do not have the memories and they're gone. the special items that are memoirs, and that all the memories are now up here only. But the fact that it could have a financial impact for generations to come is very real. Be as prepared as you possibly can. Keep your network of people that you know as near and dear to your heart as possible. There are people who will help you as much as they possibly can, but they can't do absolutely everything. And unfortunately, that crap now what moment that happens to so many people who go through some sort of horrific moment in life where everything just changed by some sort of act of nature or God that is unexpected, especially is beyond words. And the spirit of this is to help you to be as prepared as possible to make that next, especially 72 hours, as best and easy as possible for you. That said, for all of those who've gone through something like this before and have other tips, let's please share them. Please reach out to people if at all possible. Make comments, blow this up for me. That's great. Let me know if I need to be pointed in another direction that's going to help even more people. My heart does go out. We talk about sending hearts and prayers out to people when they have these moments. That's definitely the case with what's going on in LA. We also know, though, that there's many people every day of the week, every minute of the day, that need to have your thoughts, prayers, and assistance. And all the best to everyone that's out there. Looking ahead, if you happen to like this podcast, please subscribe, follow. We drop a new episode on Mondays. Coming up in 2025, you'll continue to hear at least once a month some sort of current event that we're talking about, because it is related to our emotions and our finances, and it does fit with the spirit of this podcast. We will also have more guests, and some of our guests will be coming up in the coming weeks as we still talk about those slices of life, those moments in time that have changed an entrepreneur that can help change your life as well. Like, follow, share. Please do that. You can find me and my company at goblazingstar.com. Also, on the socials under pretty much anything with Blazing Star. Again, my name is Chanel, and I am the owner of Blazing Star Wealth Strategies. And I thank you for joining us for this episode of Crap, Now What? Thank you to Caleb as he edits this and puts this out there in the universe and does everything he can to help make this the best production possible. Have a great day. Okay, so if you're still listening to this podcast at this stage, this is the boring stuff. This is the disclaimer. And I'm doing this because, yes, I do care about who you are and what you do with your money. And I'm going to be here to help give you some ideas. However, these are just ideas. They're theories. Sometimes these are ideas that are coming into my head based on what's going on in the world at this time. And they're not necessarily specific financial advice. I do encourage you, if you decide to do anything with your money, make any changes, seek the advice of a professional. You're welcome to follow up with me or with someone else, and make sure that what you're doing is something that fits with you, your lifestyle, your finances, and it's a strategy that's specific to you. Again, these are ideas and concepts. Do not necessarily take these as specific financial advice and follow it directly without having a full education.